So can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. So again, today we'll try to make it it's like it's supposed to be a continuation. However, we might be taking a different route today, and I hope this would work for all of us that are here. So today we are doing the part 4 of this conversation of this training session on good agricultural practices for urban dwellers or urban farmers. We're trying to make a focus on the practices itself, what makes our practices right, and what makes us have an optimal system of growth. And so far we have discussed different things, and just make a quick recap of all the things we have discussed. We have discussed defining efficiency. We've tried to define what efficiency is. I hope that most of us here have probably seen the previous videos we have done, and because this lays the foundation for what we'll be discussing today, though briefly. So we try to define efficiency and exactly why efficiency is very important in our agricultural landscape. And then in that process, we try to use the analytical comparison of the yields per square meter in export trades in different countries, particularly using countries like Netherlands, Israel, America, Nigeria, and some other African countries to allow us to see the gaps in the production systems and why this conversation is very important. And then we also moved on to discuss why good agricultural practices are actually the key missing ingredients in our agricultural system, and why we are actually deficient, and why we are not actually why we are not quite competitive when it comes to world trade. And then we try to, so I mean that helped us to see the synopsis of all the topics that we might need to address, for us to actually begin to like measure up to our production standards. And then we discussed about, so in that process, we tried to start off with site management as one of the core synopses to be discussed. And then we moved on to seed propagation materials as one of the issues to be discussed. And we discussed about post-harvest losses. And we discussed about certification and standards and specifications. We tried to let us understand how certifications is like the passport or the access to market when it comes to international trade, and how we are supposed to standardize our production systems, and then how to differentiate between standards, certification, and how to differentiate between specifications and standards. And we also, so in process of practicalizing all of this, we try to use different comparative costs of vegetables and spices. That is using spices and vegetables as a way of developing standards, as how we can actually begin to develop standards from our farms, and then how we can actually begin to convert our domestic way of trade, which is more sensational, to actually converting them to empirical data using measurable scales and things like that. Then we moved on to discuss the different agronomic requirements for crops using celosia as a case study. And that helped us understand the importance of lightning, importance of sunlight, importance of pH, and all the other technical details that is required for every plant to grow optimally. And then we also discussed the importance of quality and quantity in trade, and that the essence of this conversation of good agricultural practices basically is to help us maximize our quantities, and of course get it measured, and also optimize our quality. And knowing fully well like that, because we have a very poor system of identifying of being consistent with our qualities and our quantities, keeps us in the dark when it comes to international trade. These are some of the things that the good agricultural practice system is supposed to help us achieve. And then we discuss about the agronomic needs for, sorry for the mistake of the spelling, for optimal growth. Yeah, so this being said, I would like us to, I don't know if anybody has any questions to ask or any contributions to make before we proceed. But before we proceed, I'd like us to just understand that today we'll be moving on to the discussion on assessments. Like I'll be using I'll be using the template of GLOBAL.Ga.P, to create this assessment, and I'll be sharing with us why this is actually important and why I decided to share it this way with us. And I hope this works for us all here. So again, if there's any contribution, remarks, or questions I would like to ask, you can quickly do so now before we proceed. The next 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, in the absence of any other question, so we're going to do this as a way of proceeding. So basically today we are supposed to understand the importance of a checklist and why a checklist is important. And of course, again, we're going to show us a bit of practical guides to this. But the way of explanation, I'll let us understand is that, especially in the kind of environment we have right now, where we have people discussing, oh, this crop is GMO, this crop is it has been used with chemicals, we've used pesticides, we've used different things, and all the likes. So why the checklist is important is that for every structured market relies on a checklist as a way of auditing their systems. Meaning that if you want a serious buyer, I mean, in the simplest form, if you're exporting, for example, tomatoes, the buyer from the country would give you a document to verify that you have met all the conditions, before you actually, begin to trade. This happens a lot more in structured markets. In our local markets, sometimes we pass with this, we don't, because I mean, we just use our eyes to judge if it's good or not. We go to the market, we see the produce, we buy it, we say, oh, is it good, is it not good? I mean, we're more comfortable knowing fully well like that. We use our eyes and our sensational beings to judge, the quality or quantity of whatever it is we're buying. But when it comes to structured trade, I'm saying structured trade because structured trade is not just about exports. Sometimes you might be supplying industries, local industries. You could be supplying food business organizations, FBOs. You could be supplying aggregators, aggregators who have some sort of network to protect and things like that. So ideally, every structured buyer, would have something to be sure that the producer, that is the farmers, are meeting up to the exact standard that they need. Now, this document that they usually produce, we sometimes call them checklists. So I'm using the ones from GLOBAL.Ga.P as a template to explain this, and then of course to explain the content in it, because now we are talking about agriculture, and this would help us. I'm bringing this up here to help us understand or kind of like practicalize all the conversations we have been having in the past, especially when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to trade site management and things like that, and how this checklist actually helps us to identify, if how it works, in that scale. Now, I'm saying this to let us understand that this is not the only kind of document that you find all over the world. There are different kinds of checklists. It now depends on the kind of market that we are targeting. Again, I'm trying to make this clear. Take, for example, if you're targeting an organic market, the checklist will be quite different. If you're targeting a market from a different country, the checklist might be different. If you're targeting a market from maybe from a religious organization, the checklist might be different. But I'm just trying to let us understand is like that the foundation of structured trade, lies so much on a checklist. Now, and this works for different, but I'm using this to expose or to let us understand, how the audit system works internationally. So if you want to trade some crops, especially in a structured market internationally, you are expected to have been audited. And one of the ways of being audited is through a checklist. And the checklist does two things. It does one internal assessment, and then also external assessment. I'll be explaining to us how this works as we keep going forward. So give me a few minutes. I might have to end this screen and then upload the other to show us how the document works. But for now, I'm using primary farm assurance and integrated farm assurance as case studies. I'll be projecting more of the integrated farm assurance from GLOBAL.Ga.P more, and hopefully if time permits, I'll share something from the primary farm assurance. But I mean, they're basically the same thing. I'm using the IFA. This is called the integrated farm assurance. It's called the IFA in the sense of like that it's more comprehensive, it's more detailed, and then it's like I said, something that is used for the export market. Yeah, so give me a few minutes and quickly share something around this. So again, can you hear me? I hope I'm audible? Because I can see someone saying I can hear you. Hello, so can you see my screen, please?
Yes.
Okay. So this is supposed to be a document to let us explain how the checklist actually works. So from the it is understood that this document is supposed to be like an overview of what is expected to for you to have on your farm if you would if you are to. So this is what it's supposed to be. This is like a comprehensive, I don't want to say comprehensive, but an overview document that is expected for you to have on your farm. You know, because when you're trying to trade on a structured platform, it's expected that. So I mean, this is why I'm showing this up here because I know we had some sort of conversation and some of detailed trainings on in regards to the content of all of these things. I'm trying to show us these documents to let us see the comparison, and in how the checklist operates and how how the work that needs to be done, is supposed to be done, so to speak. So this is integrated farm assurance. What? I didn't get that, sorry. Hello? Okay, so can you hear me? Can you still hear me? Hello?
Hello.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so as I was saying, so this is like, so I mean, so when we are trying to do this conversation, we have what we call this is an integrated farm assurance. So it's farm assurance, like quality assurance, right? So this is how we're supposed to see that a producer is doing the right things. Now, a producer is supposed to do what we call a self-assessment. This document is supposed to, so it's a procedure. When you do your self-assessment, you find out where your gaps are, what the things you need to do extra, the things you need to do more to be validated or to see that you have done the right things. And afterwards, you now begin to invite an auditor, to come assess your level of preparedness for you to be for you to have for you to trade, with your buyers internationally, with structured markets, so to speak. Now, like I said, this document is for GLOBAL.Ga.P. There are other documents. It depends on who you're trading with. Now, this document is quite important because almost all over the world, this is like a leveler when it comes to good agricultural practices. It's like something that almost all buyers all over the world rely on. Meaning that if you're able to meet up with this document, most likely you'll be able to meet up with any other kind of documents, so to speak. So what this means is that so anyways, so there's what we call control points and compliance criteria. Although the name has changed now, but I mean this because it's like an old document. I'm using an old document so that it helps us understand better, how it actually operates. So there's what we call compliance or control points and compliance criteria. That is, these are those points that we're trying to bring them out. From one point, we see if you have like the document, and then it keeps going on and on and on like that. In every point, we have what we call the things that you must have on your farm. That is, we call them the major must, and things that you should have on your farm, but probably not as important as the major must, and that we call them the minor must. And there are some things I just recommended. So as the evaluations keep coming up, it begins to change. Something that was once a major must kind of like shifts to a minor must. Something that was always recommended could shift to a minor must, and then it could go back from being a minor must to a recommended structure. It depends on what the reviews say. So we have the all farm days. So we have the all farm, meaning that so there are some things that is required for you to have on your farm generally, even irrespective of what kind of um, uh, structure you have. I'll give an example. If you have a farm where you have the animal section, you have the plant section, you have the feed mill, you have all of those things, within your complex. So there are some things that are expected for you to have. We call them the all farm base. And if you keep going on, we'll find out that, okay, there are some things that we need to have when it comes to the actual production system that you have, which is either going to be um, like the crop. Well, for now, we're discussing crops, so it's going to be crop based. And it's crop based means that it's all kinds of crops that is expected for you to have. And then there are some things that are going to be like going to be probably just strictly for fruits and vegetables, or it could be for crops, it could be for different kinds of different kinds of crops, right? So this is just like I said, supposed to give us an overview of what it kind of like looks like. Now, what this means is this like that. If you have a document, so this is like the table of contents. You can see where we have what is expected for you to have when it comes to the all farm base, your site history, your site management, your record keeping, internal assessment, and then your hygiene, workers' health, subcontract. I mean, so the idea of this is for us is to try to use this document to explain some things, in the practical sense of how we have been discussing it before now. So I'm sorry, I might be skipping the introduction here. I've kind of like explained, what is already here. So we can see, okay, so I tried, this is like an overview description of what it is here. But of course, as of today, some of these models have kind of like shifted a bit from how it is right now, because the livestock part of the document has been expunged out, for other companies to operate with. But basically, this is where we are going to be operating on. You can see my mouse here is going to be operating just on this level here. That is the crop base, the fruits and vegetables, flowers and ornamentals, combined crops and all of that. But we are going from all farm base to crop base and then just to fruits and vegetables. I'm using this, like I said, this is an overview for us to understand how some of all these structures actually operate and how they work, in that international scheme of things, correct? So now this is where I'm going to exactly. So it's expected that when we say compliance criteria, that is, it's expected that when we are operating our farms, that one of the things we should have is to understand the site history. Now, if we understood, like from the first conversation we had, I tried to talk about site management. I tried to talk about how to structure the farm in such a manner that you can actually begin to, because I mean, like I said, that forms the foundation of your traceability. Now, in your documentation process, these are some of the things you need to have, right? You need to have, because when it comes to international trade, it's more of how you're able to put up your documents. Like I said, if you're doing local trade, it's more of your assessment is coming more from sightseeing. Like I go to the market, I see what I buy, and I like it or not, and then I buy it. When it comes to international trade, you're more armed with your documents. You're more armed with your, what you have, how you're able to keep your records and all of those things. Now, I'm showing all of this to let us understand some of the documents that are expected of you to have, and probably how to organize them and how to put them in order, right, for us to have like a more structured farm. So one of the things that we have to understand is how to keep a record when it comes to site history and site management. So like I said, the reference document is expected that you should have like a physical sign, on your farm, that shows you where everything is, that shows you where the site A farm. I mean, if I hope that we have actually seen the previous videos. This way, you might actually get to understand why this is important. But like I said, if you're structuring your farm, you're supposed to have, like, okay, so we have plot A, A1, A2, plot A, B, A4, like that kind of diagram. You should expect to have it physically, as a proof to say that yes, I have done my farm referencing system, I have done my farm map, I have done all of those things, right? And then of course, and that is supposed to be a document. And then on the site also, you should have it labeled, like, okay, so on my farm, I have pen 1, pen 2, pen 3. I have site 1, site 2, site 3. I have a greenhouse. I have the water irrigation system. This is my what's it called? Like everything should be labeled, and everything should, as it's labeled, it should also reflect on your map. And as I said, the farm map and farm site and all of those things. Now, your current system for each production unit should have a record of everything, right? So, like I said, it's just like this is something that's supposed to be like your all farm base, like the entire farm structure should be well documented, like, as it is. Now, knowing fully well like that, there's a difference between some people. They have, so like if you have, take for example, you have 2 hectares on your farm or 3 hectares, but you're currently using 6 plots, right? So it's expected that on one hand, you should capture the entire farm, and then you should also capture the exact farm that you are actually operating with. So if you're operating with 1 hectare or 2 hectares, or or 5 plots or whatever it is, you should actually have a way of, okay, this is what I'm documenting 5 plots as against the 5 hectares that I have. But the idea is for you to know how to separate both documents, right? Now, again, you understand this conversation is just more about helping us understand how to prepare some documents, how to organize our documents, the kind of records to be kept, and why it's actually important for us to keep them for international trade, right? And of course, and I'm not going to say for internet, for structured trade, right? Not just but for structured trade, right? Because these are things that helps us to validate our quality assurance system when it comes to having a proper audit system. Now, from the site management, like I said, so now this other part here, which we haven't discussed, is knowing how to prepare a proper risk assessment. It's expected that we should have a proper risk assessment document showing us that the site that we have, I mean, we have a very strong risk mitigation plan against everything. No, I'd like to just bring out some points here right now in our kind of practices in Nigeria, why this is very important, especially when it comes to risk assessment. We've heard so many times where there are some farms um, that was uh, that was taken over by flood. So we had this farm, we produces, all of a sudden it was ripped off with flood. Or we had a farm and this has happened, no, they came to steal all our produce. Or we had a farm and this has happened. Or we had a farm, there was a lot of wind movement, there was a lot of this, a lot of that. The idea behind the risk assessment is that before we even start anything at all, we should have that analysis done. This is something I'm saying this because I know that there are so many farms that fall victim to what we call unforeseen circumstances. However, those unforeseen circumstances could have been avoided if a proper risk assessment was done. Of course, so in all of this conversation, we also, I mean, if this was a proper GAP training structure, would have explained to us how a risk assessment is being done. Okay, but basically, what this means is that we're trying to help us understand the importance of the risk assessment. Now, the risk assessment is not just about this; it also has to be about the physical. Like I mean, if we have, so there are what we call physical chemicals, they call site history. So we have to understand the years upon which it has been done. Is it prone to a chemical? Is it prone to like for example, if the site is very close to if like an industry where they produce a lot of chemicals, that is something that's supposed to be captured. You're supposed to evaluate that kind of thing to see if what you're producing would not actually be affected by the environmental pollution that might be coming from that site, or perhaps the site you're using, the place where is a place where there has been some sort of military action or there has been some sort of war has happened there. So there might be some sort of mines or there's some sort of bombs that have happened there, which have made the soil very heavily polluted or whatnot. So this is why the site history, the site and all of those things is very important that you have that kind of document prepared. You have to have some like a legal document to say that okay, so this land has been leased to me by so person, and it has been I've been authorized to use this for the next 4 or 5 years, for the next 10 years, for the next or perhaps I have bought this land, something to validate your authenticity to use that land to so these are the things that capture the kind of site management and then documents that are supposed to have. Of course, when we read through all of these documents, I'm really trying to give an overview. You will see the details of why these are things that are required and these are things that are important to be had. In different countries, it could be more, it could be less. Like I said, this is just like a level to help us understand the averages. Now, when we move on from that, we understand like that. So we can see that, so we call this, you can see it's called a major must. That is, this is something that you must have. And it's not just that you must have it, it's very important that you have it. So site management, when it comes to risk assessment, is the major must that you have it. So you say that, so aside from having the risk assessment, so have you also done some sort of plan to mitigate that risk identified? This is something that you must also have. So it's one thing to identify the risk. The other thing to have created a structure, a plan to mitigate against the risk. Take for example of the flood that happened. in I think some of the rice production farms that happened some time ago in some areas. I mean, if a proper now this is the thing, it's not just to have risk assessment, but to have a very good risk assessment done. So if a proper risk assessment has been done, I mean like that, oh, this area is a very flat land and it's close to the waters. It's the water table is very low and all of those things. And then you see like that, okay, so perhaps if flood happens, what are we going to do? So I mean, these are the things that when you're doing your risk assessment, you're going to find out if it is something that you can actually mitigate or not. And if you can mitigate against it, you're going to also evaluate it. If you have losses, how will it impact you? So these are things that helps you take decisions on to proceed or not to proceed. Sometimes just okay, so I mean, if I know that this is an area that's prone to flooding, that is prone to this, then I can actually, instead of planting a crop that might be affected by the flood, I might actually end up planting a crop that would actually thrive best, or thrive more, even if it were flooded. So these are the things that helps us to make informed decisions, right from the get-go. And then, of course, to see if we can mitigate against it. I'm giving another example of this mitigation plan is that if you have your site close to an industrial zone, for example, it might mean that, okay, because I have a plant, then it means that if I'm growing in a greenhouse, then I might be protected against the environmental pollution, for example. And that's my mitigation plan. Okay, so point is like that. So because you've identified a risk doesn't mean that that's the end of the world. It only means that you have to think ahead to see what can be done in the event that that risk happens.
ó
Stuff.
máa stop ní òun ní ilé ìtẹ̀tẹ̀ yìí mo ti ṣe ẹ ti rí.
kò rìkọ́dù.
Sorry. One is looking at the background. Okay.
tó bá jẹ́ wẹ́wẹ́ sí normal.
Okay. Okay, so that explains for site management. Now, if we move to record keeping. Now I'm moving to record keeping and self-assessment and inspection and internal inspection. So why is this person unmuting themselves now? Okay, sorry. Yeah. Minutes. Yeah, sorry. So one of the other things so this is like all farm based for two, record keeping and internal assessment. Now I said something that this document that we are seeing here is supposed to be like an internal assessment. It can be used for internal assessment and also used for external assessment. Now what does this mean is that we're expected, before anything happens, we're expected to have done your own assessment, to have seen if you have if you have all your records kept, all your documents right, if you've done all the things that you're supposed to be done on the farm right, you know, before you begin to engage someone external to come and validate your structure, and that's what we call an auditing system. So your farm is supposed to be audited. If your farm is audited and it's found to be good, then you can be certified. Basically, what you need, but it starts with your own self-assessment. So it's expected that you have your records kept and your records kept in the right manner. So what this means is that we can see the F2 is saying that are all your records that are requested in your external inspection accessible and have been kept for a period of less than 2 years, unless a longer requirement is stated in specific control points. So which means that it's expected that you're doing IFA, it's expected that you should have your documents, and your documents will have been well structured and well kept for at least 2 years, you know, that can be easily accessed and then easily validated. Now, it means that, so of course, this is saying that overview of all your documents, not just any specific document, but overview of all your documents, meaning that it's expected that you must have had some sort of consistency in your operations, and then you must have seen how your operations operate, and then having your records being kept. So in the course of all this, as we keep proceeding, we'll see where other documents that could be required, and then how it actually operates. So yeah, so it's expected that you should have that, and then not just having that. Now you're supposed to know who takes responsibility for those documents, who did the internal assessment in the first place. Is the person actually understand the structure and all of that. So these are the things that also like a major must. So you must have you must have an evidential thing to produce to show that yes, this has been done by someone who has been competent enough to do an internal assessment, that has done some sort of training or some sort of capacity building in that regard, that must have done some sort of internal assessment. There's what we call the quality management system as well. Let me just quickly check this in here. So the quality management system is like a system that so if you have like a group of producers, you have like 10 producers that you want to certify, or you have 10 producers that are supposed to producing the same thing, you know. So the quality management system is a system that is supposed to be used to control all the network that you have, to ensure that they are doing everything in unison. Like this, you're producing at the same level of quality, at the same level of quantities, or at the valid level, responsible system of operations, the right food safety measurements, right, everything you're doing, it's like in sync. Having it done in sync. So the QMS is supposed to help you validate that system is being done. So when it comes to multiple producers, that is, the documentation procedure might be quite different when it comes to having the QMS done, right? So these are some of the things that are supposed to be known and supposed to be done when it comes to having that document already. And then also, it's expected that you have a documented corrective measure system, meaning that there's no way you do an assessment that you not find something wrong or something missing, or something that can be done better. The idea of the assessment is for you to see that, okay, so I produced at this level this year, and while I was producing at this level this year, my target was to have 80% production, and unfortunately for me, I had 75%. So the idea is for you to purge yourself and then begin to ask what must have happened that made me produce at 75% as against the 80% that I projected. Now, whatever it is that you find out, you're supposed to actually document those things, and then so your document is supposed to reflect that you have been making moves to correct those things that you must have missed out in the first place. Okay. Then move into the hygiene part of it. Now, hygiene in the sense of like that, so it's expected that like your system, you know, should have a procedure that shows that you have a risk assessment done. That's risk assessment, meaning that on your farm, you should be able to identify the potential things that can create poor hygiene, that can stop the hygiene system on your farm. And so sometimes it could be very small, it could be like that. So we have a farmer that just comes from the Waterloo and just comes to operate on the farm directly. How do you prevent how do you prevent that from happening? How do you prevent like a refuse being illegally dumped on your farm? So these things seem a bit simple and basic, but I mean until you're on the farm and you see the effect of not having all of these things done before you see that so that's why most of the time we get so many farms, you just find out like that everything is just so kind of like polluted. You always see overgrown weeds, you always see filth somewhere around the corner and all of that. Right. So the idea is like that, is for you to see that these are issues, and if you don't address them, beforehand, they could actually begin to create some sort of uncontrollable repercussions. And we have to understand like that, especially in this part of the world, hygiene is something that we are very careless with, and because we're very careless with it, this is one of the things that actually affects our international trade. We have to understand is that because, I mean, we find it a lot because someone wants to export. So, we try to like do what is right for that production system for us to export. But we forget that in the international eye space, it's everybody's the same. So whether you're doing it right, you're not doing it right. Everybody kind of like there's a generalized system that is being looked upon you when you say that okay, these farmers in Nigeria or these farmers in this locality, they are taking their hygiene properly. They're not taking it serious. So of course, the idea is for you to be aware of what these contaminations can do, and then how you can mitigate against them. Now, you need to understand that there's a big difference between hygiene and food safety. Uh, there are two different things. So sometimes your farm could be actually hygienic, but doesn't guarantee to be safe. Okay, and of course, as we keep proceeding, we keep explaining why this is different and why this is important. Okay, so as we keep proceeding, then we move on to the hygiene aspect and move into workers' health and safety. I mean, so this is kind of like basic, but it's expected that you should have a procedure of ensuring that your workers are well protected and safe in terms of their welfare, in terms of their, I'm sorry. Okay. So in terms of the workers' health and safety, it's expected that all like in the written risk assessments should be done. You have to identify the hazards that are possible that they are most likely to encounter. Take for example, if you are living in the forest, you should know that the chances that okay there could be a snake attack, and because it could be a snake attack, so you have to have done something to prevent that from happening. And God forbid that happens, what are the risks? What are the things you can easily do? So perhaps beforehand you have known that okay, so I need to know where to get anti-venom and all of those things. That is, you have to be well prepared, for your workers and your workers' health and your workers' safety, their welfare, their salaries, their unionism and all of those things. You have to make sure that they're well captured and well protected. Protect their production system. Now, training. No, so of course, we want to be sure that there's a document kept for them. How well have they been trained? And it's not just so. I mean, there are different kinds of trainings. You want to be sure that they are trained on how to in terms of, God forbid, accidents happen, what are the procedures that they need to take? First aid things, what are they supposed to do? In terms of their production system itself, like how well have they been trained to do whatever it is that they are doing? Now, this is something that we take for granted, or sometimes we do on our farms, on our production system. This is something we do with our staff, or just that we don't document them well. The idea of this is to help us understand like that while we are doing all of this, whether it's informal or formally, we should have a procedure of documenting it. Take, for example, so a farmer, a buyer comes to the farm and says that, oh, I want to be buying tomatoes, but I will need you to package them in this manner. I'll need you to make sure that they are of this size. I need you to grade them in this manner. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. I mean, all of those things. Now, the moment you go back to your staff and then tell them like that, look, so we have this demand, we have this, so you're going to kind of like do some sort of step down training to let them understand like this is how this is supposed to be done, this is how it's supposed to be done, this is how it's supposed to be done. And then you now begin to evaluate how well they have adopted or adapting to that training. Now, the idea here is to see that we are actually capturing those training and then letting them know that, okay, so we have done this training, so it's expected that you validate that structure. Like I said, this is supposed to help to understand how to structure our production systems in such a manner that begins to match up with international trade. And these are some of the things that we just need to just understand. I'm saying again that these are things that we do, just that we most likely just don't we don't just keep the documents and the records right. Then, like I said, so this also goes back to the hazard and first aid equipment. So, so this I'll give this actually came in very handy in one of the farms that we actually did this for at some point, where the farm. So one of the things we had to do there was to see that it's very simple. What we did then was to get the numbers of the closest hospitals in that environment, get the numbers of the securities in that environment, like the DPO, like the policemen around that area. We got the number of the fire service agents. I mean, that's just, just this alone. And God, helpfully, when an accident actually happened at the farm, and the number was just there. So each and every one of the staff member in that place just found it useful. Okay, so I could easily just call this number and then get help. I mean, this happened in Nigeria actually, and then fortunately, it came in handy and was very helpful. Why is this important? Because naturally, these are things that we probably would have just taken for granted, like that doesn't really matter. But again, having it there doesn't change anything. But when it actually comes in handy, then you find out like that, it was actually very important for this to have been done. So of course, there are procedures of how this should be done. That is, you have to know how to put a farm map system. You have to know where the muster point is, where everybody should come into. God forbid anything happens. If it happens, how you supposed to do all of these things. And then of course you have an updated numbers of everyone in that vicinity, transportation, electricity, health, and all of those things. Of course, you could also actually capture like where the closest location is. Take for example, the closest hospital. If you're in this particular community, okay, the closest hospital is 2 meters away, or 10 meters away, or 10 kilometers away, or 5 kilometers away. Where is the community? So you probably want to also kind of have some sort of details to all of those things. Okay, so of course your protective coding as well. How to document that as well. So this is where we actually want, and there's what we call biosecurity as well. So these are things that you also want to have your producers, your workers have. And then if you are having people that, take for example, now you're on your farm, you bring in people to come and weed for you, you bring in people to come and plant for you. They are not necessarily your staff, but people that just come around. So you also want to, even if they are coming to your farm, you also want to be sure that you are giving them what is required for them to protect yourself and your farm. Now, I mean, these are things that we take for granted, but I'll give another example of why this is very important. There's a farm I know that because we got an ad hoc staff from the farm. Now this guy actually goes to different farms. And unfortunately, because he has been to a farm that was heavily infected with some sort of diseases, and then the moment he came to that person's farm, it just kind of like transmitted a lot of diseases into the farm. Now, bear in mind that this is a farm that's invested millions of naira, to develop that farm, and just because of someone that is supposed to pay maybe like 50,000 and 30,000 naira, that he probably didn't take care of properly, or perhaps it wasn't well addressed or well taken care of or whatnot. Brought in something into the farm that cost the farm another set of millions in losses. So this is why these are things that kind of like subtle, but it looks very abstract, but also very important. Okay. So of course, you can also read through this and then find out how best to do them. That is, you have to have a way of cleaning them to be sure that your farm clothing and equipment are always clean, and then who is responsible for them to be cleaned and things like that. So you may remind, like I said, these are just general things when it comes to all farm, whether irrespective of your kind of production. So these are things that you should have generally on your farm. And of course, we've discussed about workers' welfare. So this time around, just kind of like bringing it closer home. And why it's actually important that we do this with our workers. And of course, I also kind of like did the same with the subcontractors. And then waste pollution management and recycling and reuse. So again, knowing fully well that that there are chances that every farm would always generate waste, but not many of us actually know how to handle the waste and what to do with it. So the idea for us to know is, one, not just identify the waste, but identify where the source of that waste is coming from and what to do with it. This is sometimes where we have to put up our creative caps, to see that. So if take for example, on the farm now, you have some goats or you have some sheep, and they would always produce some excreta or something, or you're producing chickens and you're producing chickens, and then you're producing chickens and you also have a vegetable farm. I mean, this is something that's very practical. This actually happened also. So there's this farm I know that they produce manure. In fact, no. Initially, they started off with a lot of waste. It was a poultry farm, and from the first day they generated close to a ton of waste. Just day one, it was a very big farm, and they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to evacuate it. They didn't know anything. And then day two, it was doubling. Day three, it was tripling, that kind of thing. So, I mean, it became a very big burden that they had to muster a lot of processes to evacuate it, to get it out of the farm and all of that. Now, fast forward to like 7 months. Fast forward 7 months. Some Hausa guys came and then said, "Oh man, this is manure on your farm. Can we come and buy it?" And then these guys, they came, they brought in their sacks, then they started doing the work by themselves, and they still paid for the waste there. Right now, this is why this is very important, because there was no study done, or there was no thinking cap. You didn't think it through, like, okay, so we have this waste, we could actually sell them, or we have this waste, we could actually use it on our vegetable farm, or we have this waste, we can actually use it for this. So this is the thing, like, we also have to be proactive in how we think of how we manage our waste, what we can use it for, and how we can actually aid or help our structure in such a manner that, one, we are not overly polluting the environment, and then we are also contributing to some sort of sustainability structure within the farm. Now, this is supposed to help us know how to document all of these things, because by documenting it also helps us track our procedures, and that is where we have to learn how to identify the waste and then the pollutants. How to get rid of them if it actually happens that we cannot actually reuse them. Take, for example, if you are having procedures that could be hazardous to the environment, probably using you're probably using some chemicals and then some sort of bottles or whatnot. So, I mean, it depends on the kind of pollution that you're creating or the source of the pollution before you can actually know what to do with it. But and the idea is for also actually just create a plan, around your waste and then knowing how to protect against it. Same with environment, probably where you have your diesel or where you have your electricity or whatnot. So whatever it is that you're creating, how to be able to so identify it, classify it. Okay, so this kind of waste it cannot be reused. This waste can be reused. Okay, so this is personal. It's something that you have to know and you have to keep and you have to document, so to speak. So okay, this also goes to conservation. So I mean, biodiversity. You have to. So it's always safer when you know that okay, you're in an environment where you have a very healthy biodiversity system, and then how that impacts the environment and how it impacts your farm as well. It's also very important. So still on back to this complaints. So so when it comes to farm complaints or complaints generally, so this also happens a lot. Probably you sold something to a farmer or sold something to someone, and this happens to every one of us. If you are a producer, definitely you must have had someone complain, oh, by the time I took it to where I was going to, it was already spoiled. Oh, by the time I brought it down, it was already this. It was not big enough. It was already the sack was this, the sack was that. So basically, ideally, you should have the procedure of capturing, all the complaints that the people you trade with have. Probably even if it's your workers, you should have a documented procedure because, like I said, these are some of the things that you have to document to see that okay, next year we had this complaint, we evaluated it, and we found that okay, so we can actually do better by doing this and that, doing that. I mean, all of those things that we need to do to see that the production system is getting better and getting better by the day. So it's from the complaints that we are able to evaluate, where our mistakes would have been, or perhaps where the person making the complaints should have done something or giving some sort of feedback, right? So the idea is for us to have a documented system of attracting and addressing all of these things. Okay. And this also leads us to, so sometimes the complaints might actually happen that you might actually have to recall or withdraw the procedures or withdraw procedures. So this has happened. Recall is not something. For us who are in what's it called? Very how do I put this? Secondary production. Perhaps could hear, oh, this thing there was a default in something, and they will have to do a recall process, or we have to recall this batch, or we have to recall this, we have to recall all of those things. So we have to know how to do how to. So of course, without having so the assistance you have to have put in place for us for you to have been able to create a proper recall procedure and all of that stuff. But basically, these are just some of the things that you have to know. So these are also major ones that you have to understand how to do without it. So I'll basically just put it this way: you cannot do a proper recall process if you don't have a very strong traceability system. And you cannot have a very strong traceability system if you don't have a proper reference system and a proper site management system. So basically, that's just an overview of what the recall process is. And of course, this gives us also food defense. That is, so they have, so because we understand like that, there are people who would always, it's possible, there are people, it's possible that people can always come and attack your farm. You can always do some things to come and to either, if not attack your farm, at least maybe attack the people who are buying from you or whatnot. So you have to have a procedure or a risk assessment document done to see that, okay, you are protected against this kind of challenge, so to speak, because we've seen it in so many videos, yeah, so many places where someone just kind of like almost poisons the farm, or probably just comes to the farm, put some sort of toxic chemical on your farm. Just do things that naturally just wants to either hurt you economically or hurt your producers or just create some sort of mass attack. We are not yet in that terrorist system where people can actually begin to want to use your farm to some sort of mass attack. But yes, it has happened in so many other countries, and this is supposed to help you protect against things like that. So you should have a procedure to show that, yeah, you are creating a system that protects both your farmers, the produce itself, and then the buyers from such kind of attack. So that's the food defense in its nutshell. So the status of GLOBAL.G.A.P, this is kind of like internal. This really doesn't really affect us as it is, except we are actually a producer as it is. And this conversion happens when you are a producer. So it's sort of section about traceability and segregation. So I've tried to explain in one of the production systems that we did on how to develop a proper traceability system. And that starts with how you actually prepare your farm. I actually, put up your structures in such a manner that it is create a proper referencing system. Without a proper structure from the beginning, probably will not have a very good traceable system. So the idea of traceability is like that you should be able to track, from the start of your operations up until the time of marketing, up to the time of sales, and so you can actually identify where this is coming from or where it's coming from, and have a system that separates your farm from other kinds of production system, especially if you're a certified farmer. You should have a system of separating what you have produced that has been certified from what has not been certified, and that's why you have to have a very good documentation system. So I think I can stop for now, and then because it's a whole lot that might be needed to cover, and I don't know if we'll be able to do that today. But yeah, let me see if there's anything that I'm just thinking to address. So anyways, I think this is just addressing the issue of risk assessment, and then where the kind of points, just summarizing the kind of items that I want to use your risk assessment for. So you want to address it on the aspect of legislation. You want to address it on the aspect of use is use of the land itself, what has been used for actually have and things like that. and then the other impacts of what this could do. Yeah. So now I think that kind of like summarizes things for all farms. That is, I mean, just an overview of what you should have on all your farms, like all your farm base. Then we come when it comes to crop base now, like I said. So we are stepping it down. Let me quickly show us the very first step because we can actually follow where all of this is like this. So let's not forget we started from the all farm base that is here, all farm base. So all of the things I've discussed is just basically for everything on the farm, whether you're doing crops, whether you're doing aquaculture, whether you're doing livestock. I mean, this is just something that works for every kind of farm that you have as an overview. But now we are moving into the crop based. Then from if you're able to capture this crop based, then might be moving to fruits and vegetables. Basically, but of course, just stepping it down to let us see. Of course, there'll be things that might overlapping themselves, but because this is the idea is just for us to have an overview of what it is. So I think I might be stopping at the crop base, and then see if we have any contribution or questions to ask, and then probably call it a day for today. So you can see on the crop base now. So this coming a bit down to how to prepare proper traceability system. That is, traceability is the first thing on all farm base. That is, now we can see that what traceability is in all farm base is quite different from what traceability is in crop base, and to also be different from what it is when you're actually breaking it down to the micro units of the farm itself, which is the fruits and vegetables or animal base or whatnot. So traceability facilitates the recall or withdrawal of flowers, ornamentals, or customer base and target with accurate information concerning indicated products. The GLOBALG.A.P registered product traceable mark. I mean, this is just so we want to start with propagation materials. Now, so the choice of propagation material plays an important role in the production process, and by using the appropriate varieties can help reduce the number of fertilizers and the plant protection products application. Choice of propagation material is a preconditional for good plant growth and product quality. So basically, what this means is this, and this is where we begin to talk about the things we have discussed earlier when we come because I remember when we discussed about seed and seed propagation. This is where and seed and seed propagation, try to let understand like that. There's a difference between, or there's a propagation material journey doesn't mean just seeds alone. It means that anything that can be used to to propagate. And the foundation of your safety starts from here. Now, so where this is important is because the quality of the material that you're using is very important. So I mean, we're in an era where everybody is like, oh, this is they're giving us GMO seeds, or they're giving us, oh, the ginger that we have is GMO, or this we have is GMO, and yeah, I mean, so that, I mean, we're in that era now, and so the idea is this is like that. So this is what this should have helped us do, especially when you're trying to document, is to help us understand that. It's almost impossible for you to know what the outcome of something is if you haven't documented or if you don't know where the source is coming from. And this is supposed to help us identify where the source of every production system starts from. That's, like I said, it's a foundation for traceability. Sorry. Okay. That's like a foundation for traceability. Sorry, let me see. I think I missed. So that's like a transformation for traceability. So aside from this, so you want to know the kind of crop, kind of seed that you're using, kind of production material that you're using. We want to be sure that the kind of production system that you're using is actually it resonates with the market demand. Because the market wants something, the market wants organic tomatoes, and then you're using GMO tomatoes, that can't work. So you have to, if you're saying if the market wants organic tomatoes, it's from here. But you want to be sure that you're using organic seeds, you're using like you're raising the right seeds, right propagation material. The market wants something big. You use the right kind of material to propagate to be sure that you're actually doing the right thing. Right. So so this is like the foundation of it. So propagation materials, it's quite important, and then you have to know how to keep. Like I said, everything I'm saying here is just a thing of knowing the kind of documents to keep and how to keep them, and then the importance of why it needs to be kept. Okay, so you have to know how to keep the propagation materials and then the seed, and then if you read through all of these documents, it will probably show you what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. And then you're using chemicals to treat them, or you're trying to preserve them in such a manner, in any manner, you have to declare how you're doing it, the procedures you used to do it, what exactly it is that you used, and then of course being open with it in regards to how you did and the effect of it. We can see now you can see genetically modified organisms that is not applicable if no if genetic modifications are used. So here it's saying that you have to, aside from the fact that it's not, this is like an international thing, it's not something that you just use without declaring. So it's trying to let you understand that the plants or plant material genetic modified. So you have to know that aside from, you have to be sure that even where you're using it, in the country you're using it, it is not against the law to use it. And if it's against the law, then you have to know how to declare it and how to get the right license. Just let us understand like that. It's not so using genetically modified organisms something that you should just use without an illegal thing to do. When you're growing without declaring that you're doing it, or probably having a documentation to back up that you have the right to do it, or you're allowed to do it over there. Okay, so so this is just like a procedure for the use of it, and then how to ensure that you're not unduly using it illegally. And see, so you look through it, basis from other groups. Then it goes into soil management and conservation. That is how to document your soil. Yeah, so I think in the absence of anything, I think I can just I think because all of the things, every other thing here, kind of like discussed. It's just these are just the things to know. Like I said, the kind of records to be kept, and then how and why it's important for it to be kept. Now, like I said, understand is that this is supposed to be like an assessment document that you should have on your farm. As a private farm owner, you should have it on your farm. And then if you want to be audited, these are things that you should have your farm for you to be properly audited against for structured market, so to speak. So in the absence of any other thing, I think I'd like to hold it for now and then see if we have any contributors or remarks to make. I can call it a day. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this wonderful facilitation. On behalf of the CEO, I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation. And also appreciation goes to the participants. I'm sure the reason for the low turnout was because of the shift, probably. So we tried as much as possible to reach out to as many as possible just to make sure that the session witnessed large out of participants, but that was not achieved. But we hope to correct this in the future or subsequent sessions. Thank you very much once more, and thank you all for your time and patience and understanding for the change of the session schedule.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate the contributions made. And again, I apologize for the shape of the time. It was just unfortunate that something came up and then it was very important that it had to be addressed. So I really apologize for that.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, please ask. Please ask.
How do we get these documents? Because while you were teaching, like, there are many things that are so comprehensive here that like you need to sit down and also recap or go through it again for better understanding. So how do we get this particular document you taught from?
I mean, if you share it, I mean, it's a public document. It's not the public document. You can always access it. Actually, this is like an old one. So if you go to GLOBAL.Ga.P Document Center, you could get the latest one. You can download it and then see what's up. But I'm using this one because this was broken down a bit into structures that can help us, have an overview and then narrowing it down as against the other ones. It's kind of like, I mean, so you could get it there. And if you want this, I could actually share it, but yeah, I can share it as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I think we can call it a day again. Oh, is there another question?
Not
Hello?
for me, sir.
Hello, this is Mr. Jeffter speaking from Lagos.
All right, sir.
All right, so from the session today, I can now understand why this one is tagged number 4, which means 1, 2, 3 has gone, and we are attending the number 4 now. Also, from your initial introduction, you refer to previous sessions that are taking place.
Yes.
So it means that for those of us who are having the session, like me, who is having it for the first time, I would like to know how I can have access to the previous 1, 2, 3, so that it can add up as a whole for me. Because most of the things you were referring to, I try to see how I can get those information, but it's not just possible. That is my observation. Then secondly, I like to also say that it looks like this training is a continuation of a previous one, and it's going to be on and on like that. So what arrangement is being put in place for those of us who want to continue with the sessions will be able to key in? Because what I've observed so far is a group of us is assigned to attend a session, and probably by next week now or next training, I may not be fortunate to be in that group. So what can be done to address that? Because if we are just having just a part of the training, it will not enable us to make the good decisions and catch up on the knowledge that we are trying to get. That's my observation, please. Thank you.
I think that's left for the admins to cover. so I mean, again, we have to give the credit to the organizers of this program. You know, it's a personal drive to see that a whole lot more people get to understand, you know, what the practices entail, and then how to actually, you know, and develop our economy, and so to speak. But again, I hope what you heard today was helpful. I hope it wasn't too complex. I hope to actually narrow down a few things. Yes. So going forward, I mean, because like I said, I don't know what the structure would look like going forward, but yeah, I don't know if in any of the groups, but we shared the videos of previous. You shared the videos of previous conversations before now. We shared it in the chat box. I don't know if you're in any of the groups. We shared it. So apparently we have 1 and 2. We have 1 and 3. 2 was unfortunately was not recorded, but we have 1, 3, and yeah. So this is supposed to be 4. So yeah. So that's how much I can say. Going forward, of course, we'll try and record it and see how it works. Yeah.
Thank you. And to quickly add to what you said, we are working to see or to make it a reality that whoever started participating in this training, they will continue to do that until we reach the end of it before we bring a different set of participants. This is something that is currently in discourse. And like you said, we would make sure that the recorded session you shared, I think earlier this morning or yesterday late, we would communicate it to all the platforms. So everybody would have access to it, those that participated and those that even didn't have the chance to participate.
I'm sorry. I want to disagree a bit. I think this should be shared with those who have registered alone. Anyone who has not registered should not have this. So I don't want this to be shared publicly.
Yeah, that's in essence, that was what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Because when you say you want publicly to the groups, I'm not going to be in support of that. Right. Yeah, we've shared 3 all the we've shared first and second publicly. But I think going forward, this can only be shared with those who have registered.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, sorry. Let me just quickly come in again. Jeff coming back. So, please, for some of us who would like to escalate to the optimum of this training, what is the assurance of our getting listed again in the next training? Because I understand that those who will be going for the next training in September, the list is being compiled already. The chances are some of us here may not be there. I had the impression like whether you had the first or the second or the third or whatever will come later, it is just a repetition of a full training that had been done. But today is my first time, and what I have observed is a continuation of the training, not just a repetition of what had been done previously. The whole syllabus had not been covered both in the first, the second, the third, and today being the 4th. So how can we, who want to continue from the beginning to the end, how can we be assured of being listed again in the next one that will be coming up in September, please? Is there any answer to that?
Hey, it's just for you to register. When you register, yeah, if you register enough, you'll be part of it. So I think someone here would answer that effectively. So.
Sorry, I have registered before.
Is it that you guys okay?
Okay, so to add to what the presenter has said, I am speaking on behalf of the CEO. I'm his PA, Yahya Zakari.
Oh, okay.
So we are quite large in number. Even registration is even a prerequisite for being part of this training or selected for this training. And the training is only permitted for 50 people. So you can see that even if we say we want everybody to be part of it, it's not possible. But like the Mr. Abdurrahman Wabrai said, we will be recording these sessions. So even if somebody is not lucky to be part of the next session, at least they will have the opportunity to go through this the recorded session and grasp or get whatever knowledge you want to get from it, which is almost the same thing of participating in the training, with the little exception of maybe being able to ask questions or seek clarifications from the live session. So I cannot say with certainty that everybody will have chance to keep coming back. That was why in my earlier submission, I said that we are working on something that will make sure that people that have been participating are the ones that keep participating, at least for this series of the training sessions.
Okay, so yeah, I think yeah, thank you very much. So again, please let's encourage others to be registered. Let's encourage others to register. Let's share some remarks. Let's share some kind words on what we have been doing here, and then let's see how we can grow from there. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Really
Bye.
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 Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yeah. Are you hearing me?
I can hear you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for the training. And my colleagues have said so many things that on my mind. That's why I've been keeping quiet all along. But is it possible that after this training, one can get a certificate? All these the trainings, what the word is. Somebody will ask you, are you certified? If you say yes, you said, okay, where is your certificate? Will this train, or do we need to do another training that can enable us to get a certificate?
You mean certificate of participation?
You say what?
Do you mean certificate of participation?
Yes.
Okay, so no, that's a proper paid training. That's more comprehensive one. Yeah, that can happen if it's a full paid training.
Sorry, I did not hear you well. You said that can do what?
That can happen if it's a full paid training.
Okay. Because I think this will be in line with the questions they've been raising, that the first module, the second one, the third one is the fourth one, because this is my first time as well. And in fact, because of the time shift, and you know what power is, I'm speaking from Ibadan, and I did not join early enough.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
So but so far so good. I think the organizers and even you, the trainer, I think I have every reason to commend you. But it's good to have the full dose, so it will make, for me, I'm a practicing farmer and I really want to implement this.
Okay. So I mean, yeah. So I would share some things, but I mean for that level, I mean it's how do I put this? It's it's going to be paid. It's for a paid training. So we are coming up with another model. So we're trying to get some auditors for even to certify your farms. To certify your farm. Like I said, this document is supposed to be a self-assessment. You're supposed to is a prerequisite to getting audited. So if you're able to do this and able to do it well, so we'll have to get people to come to your farm to do an external assessment, and from then on, you'll be issued your certificate of compliance if you are valid.
Okay, that would be nice.
So that's like a paid service. So yeah, but basically I think around say maybe it depends actually location wise, but basically if you're ready at the moment, you could be registered right now, and that would cost about 200,000 to be registered. As you register your farm, get your GLOBAL.G.A.P number, and then so we begin to prepare you. By the time you're done with your self-assessment, by the time you get to get all of these documents ready and done, then organize for your assessments, external assessments, and then if you find any infractions or anything that's missing, we try and let you know. Okay, so you need to work on this, work on that, work on this, work on that. And then if we come back and we find them to be good, then we get your certificate of compliance. And that's very good for you. You can start.
Okay. At least with this insight, I can start checking one or two things I need to fix up so that I will now position myself for the paid training.
I didn't get that, sorry.
I said with this little training insight we've gotten now, I will try to see one or two things that I can have to fix before, so that will make me prepare for the next for the paid training.
All right, that's fine.
Yes, I want to be certified. Yes, so but going forward, how do I communicate or be contact? Is it through the organizers?
Yeah, you can contact me. I mean, my number. Are you in any of the WhatsApp groups?
Yes.
Yeah, you could find my number there. So I'm also in the group, so you could just.
But I think I know you one-on-one. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Is that not Mr. Lawal?
Yeah, yes, it is.
This is Mr. Patrick.
Oh, Mr. Patrick, you met at the organic farm the other time.
Yes. We met at Noah now in Lagos.
Yes. Okay, yeah.
And before that, we've met some years back.
Yes, I remember, sir.
Thank you very much. This is good. I think if we can get it right, then